Plan Commission meeting for Tuesday, August 8, 2017 to order. The roll call, please.
Sure. Paulson,
Yes.
Warren,
Yes.
Farrar,
Here.
Zeller,
Present. Here.
Yes.
6 present.
So who is, Leaf
Leaf
is missing and who, that's it, right?
That's it.
And Mark, okay. So the first item is the approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, if no more discussion, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion for minutes is passed. And the next item on the agenda is a concept review for Plaza Development Theory LLC, Kent Johnson, request for conditional use permit for a proposed hotel development and set a public hearing for 8353 Murphy Drive. Arlene.
Well, this is a conditional use in the planned development district that exists in this area, and we think it's a really appropriate use because we do find a lot of businesses that need support type services like this, ancillary services. So the staff is supportive of it, but we do need to have a public hearing. The public hearing can be held on September 12th. So tonight is, what do you think about the site layout and the use, and then setting a public hearing.
And so it is listed as one of the conditional uses in the PDD.
It is.
Oh, should I just move that we have that public hearing? Get that out of the way?
Wow, boy, Dennis, that's great.
Our first whether this is an appropriate use in the.
Well, you could do
No.
that after you have.
We can do
Set a
before.
public hearing, I think.
Yeah, but
Yep.
we can also talk about it, so we need a...
Right, we can talk about it afterwards.
Unless you don't want to.
Okay, so do we
So-
have a second then?
I'll second.
Okay. Now it's open for discussion. So do you guys want to tell what you have, what plans you have there?
Give a quick presentation.
Yes, I think that's a good idea. They took all the time to come here and let's hear them.
See that even better over here.
Probably not the smooth presenter.
And where's Randy? Where's Randy tonight?
Exactly right. Yeah, two.
Now you can use that mic and please
Oh, yeah, you can just hold it.
identify
You can hold it
yourself
if you
and
I just pull it over.
yeah, you can hold it, you can remove it.
Wait, where?
Identify yourself and then
Is this thing on?
you can turn it on.
It should. Mark,
I think it's on.
Okay.
Okay,
Are we set to go?
yes.
Okay, I've got a couple members of the team here I'd like to introduce. We've got Kent Johnson, who's a current
Yeah, you have to
property-
have it close to your mouth. So that
Okay.
is- okay, thank you.
We've got Kent Johnson, who's a current property owner and has developed a lot of this area in the vicinity. And then we've got Cascade Development. We've got Luke Stoffaker and John Stoffaker here tonight, and they're
Okay.
are developers. They're experienced hotel developers. They did Staybridge in Middleton,
Okay,
and they just recently completed a Holiday Inn Express on the east side of Madison. So, if we have any questions regarding, the type of hotel this is or what market that's in, those would be the guys to answer that.
great.
Just really quick, to orient it, this is an aerial photograph. Costco's here, UPS, Ruth's Chris. This is Deming Way coming through, Murphy Drive, and then we're bordered by Eagle Drive and University Avenue. It's the red outline property. A little bit closer below up, we've actually dropped the site plan in on this one, just to kind of show the parking arrangement and what we have for a site layout. Again, here's Murphy Drive coming across the top. There's a few new buildings that don't show up. You've got the River Valley Bank here, and I believe there's a new strip building in here.
Mhm.
Then there's Tires Plus. And
Wait,
again, University Avenue.
Where's Monk's? Show me again.
Monk's is right here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Monk's and Arby's, I believe.
Arby's.
Is that your favorite restaurant? Kurt?
I try to visit
kidding.
all of them equally.
Me too.
All right,
That's
we
my
might as
point of
well-
reference.
On that note, we'll mention
Restaurants
Steak
and bars.
Lube then, and everybody else that's over here. But it's actually a pretty good service support area, and that's why I think it's a great location for a hotel.
So who do you think will attract who will be, you think will be staying here?
I would say it's probably going to be a combination of people visiting the area, then also supporting the businesses in the industrial park. I mean, if we want to get more in depth than that, I think we have to go to the hotel guys.
I think we can interject if you need us to on that.
Okay, could you use the microphone?
Okay.
So as far as the product's concerned, it's a limited service, Holiday Express, which competes with a Hampton Inn or a Fairfield. This type of product in its latest iteration would be 70-75% corporate user, and then would a 20 to 25% family oriented leisure on the weekends. So the main driver of the business would be the corporate 70-75% on during the weekdays, and they have kind of oriented these new hotels towards the business traveler, and the location to your current business park and the growth of your other business parks is why we find it would be a good product for this area to attract that corporate business that we've seen. And we just, like Greg had said, we opened a product in December on the east side of town. We also have a Holiday Inn, also corporate driven, but a little bit more on the leisure side of things, and we also have weddings and conventions and a restaurant there. This is that limited service that Eileen had talked about where we need other services. There's not a restaurant, there's not a bar, there's a small convenience store, but really the goal there is that corporate traveler that comes 1-2 nights, they're there to go to Fiskars or Spectrum or make a sales call to a hospital, and they would come in, they need a really nice place to stay, corporate traveler, nice fitness center, but then also would be eating out at the Monks or the Ruth's Chris and using those other facilities. So you try to orientate these near areas where there's ancillary products that can kind of support a limited service, hence the name limited service versus a full service. Down the street, you guys have a Marriott that's a full service restaurant, catering the whole deal. You stay there, that's what you're there for. This is more of a product where we bring in these corporate businesses. We'd have a sales staff that would go after kind of that corporate market and get some what we call LNRs, long-term negotiated rates, and go after some of your larger businesses, and then they would stay there on a negotiated rate and then use the other services in the vicinity.
So your economic analysis shows that there's a pretty good demand for it then?
The analysis shows a good demand. We've had an internal feasibility study that came back very positive. Also, with the hotel franchises, they have, their areas where they do their analysis, whether a brand works or not. There is a Holiday Inn down the street in Madison, I would say down the street, on John Q. Hammond's. And so that product is in Intercontinental Hotels Group is the master franchise, which has Holiday Inn, Holiday Inn Express, the Staybridge that my father did in 2003. So they asked for another study to say, how will this impact our product down the road? Now, Hilton, Marriott, same kind of deal where they do these studies. They did a study to say, should we approve this or should we not? That study came back very positive for, hey, there's a lot of growth, there's a need, this will not impact you, and they called it an impact analysis. So we did get approval from IHG to do, at Holiday Inn Express in Middleton, obviously, of course, if we get approval from you guys, and that study showed that there was a large need for this product, and it also would not impact the Holiday Inn on John Q. Hammond's.
Looks like a good site, I think.
Yeah, I think it's got Beltline access. It's university has access, and I think a big thing too is it's associated with these other products that support it as a limited service property.
And
Yes,
it's
sir.
pretty close to PPD, a major employer.
Correct. Yeah, and so when we had to do the impact analysis, IHG sent out a separate team. I believe CBRE did this study where they, out of Georgia or Atlanta, came in, said, who are your top 10 kind of, business generators that you would go after? And, so we were kind of doing a little more of our research on top of the initial kind of feasibility study. And there are a lot of large demand generators. And we also found that the current, hotel market has been strong over the last 4 or 5 years. There was a slowdown in 08, 09, 2010, but in the last 6, 7 years, the market has been strong, and specifically this Middleton market has been, strong and shows the need for more rooms.
I think it's a good use for the site. I mean, I'm not an architect, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night.
Well, we have good advertising there. We pay for that.
Had to work that in somehow.
More questions. Dave, you had something?
On the plan that you've given us here, something different happens on this bit? It doesn't show on the elevation.
Yeah.
Down here?
Yeah.
In this corner? That's actually So they actually, they have a model architectural style for this building, and these guys make some improvements on that. They have a larger pool area, a larger fitness area, some meeting rooms. They kind of expand on the standard model. And this is actually where the pool is enlarged. It's a one-story element. So it's a bigger pool, and it also adds a little architectural interest to the elevation.
So that would be something on this elevation. Right. Is this a standard elevation?
That's a standard elevation.
okay.
I was going to get to the site-specific elevation in a minute, which we didn't include in that because we're still developing it.
Okay.
But we
haven't paid for that yet.
And can you remind us, what would be the facade facing on the University Avenue 14?
okay. I guess we'll
Is that your next question? I jumped ahead.
That's fine. Good.
So Luke hasn't seen this yet. We've been working on the elevations in the actual plan for this site, and this would be the University Avenue facade. Here's that one-story element. That's the pool area down here. The building exterior materials, we have masonry, a stone masonry, and then we have 2 different IFAS colors. And it's a 4-story building with the 1-story pool element. Here, this would be the facing Deming, and then this would be the University Avenue side.
And the red stuff is what?
IFAS.
IFAS as well, okay.
I don't think I know what IFAS?
So that's a finish
Stucco.
applied over insulation.
He screwed me up too,
What's-
I would say EFS.
What's the finish?
EFS is a slow curveball in baseball.
So-
Exterior finishing product.
Exterior insulation and finish system, and
It's like
it's
stucco.
rigid insulation.
EFIS.
It's a synthetic stucco.
Oh, that's true.
Okay, but I don't know what it is.
It's a stucco type appearance.
So it's actually polymer based now, but it looks like a cementitious coating
Oh,
when it's
Okay,
placed
so-
over insulation.
when it falls over, then it'll still be there 100 years later.
When it
Or
falls
at least
over, it
parts
won't
of
hurt anybody when it hits them.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Any other questions? Kathy, Cindy, anyone?
So signage?
Haven't gotten to that yet,
Okay.
This is
but
just
there is some branding on the building.
Of course, yes. But please make it integral with the rest of the design of the building. Not something that we stick on afterwards.
It is actually on the model rendering.
Yep.
So.
And something around the corner, I notice, on the street side as well, right?
Correct.
Trust them. We want you to see.
Yeah.
Because one of the members of the audience think we talk about things that are too small to worry about. But that's important.
Agreed.
This is concept review now, though, so we'll.
Yes. It's only.
Do we offer concept approval or
It's
just at the
only
hearing?
this. No, it is
can if you want.
It's for
Yeah, you can
the.
absolutely do concept,
It's the approval for the hearing.
an approval for the.
And concept approval.
And
If
there's
you
going to be
wish.
concept approval for the use and the layout, which again isn't binding because you have to have the hearing and you have to have the final design approval. But you could do concept if you're comfortable with the way it's going, with the comments that have been made.
Well, what you have here is request for conditional use permit for a proposed and set a public hearing.
Right, we have concept review.
Okay.
Request for conditional use.
Okay, all right. Any more questions about the concept review part? And then, of course, we are setting up a hearing for it.
Did that already, right?
No, we didn't vote
We have.
on
Oh,
the
okay.
hearing.
Okay.
It was, there's a motion and a second.
Can we amend the motion to add I'm comfortable with the concept that this is an appropriate use of this land and that we'll get the details as they
Yeah.
develop them. So I would be happy enough with the motion amended to be concept approval and setting a public hearing, if the maker of the motion was willing
Okay.
to do that.
How about the maker of the motion, sir? Do you want to make such a this huge modification to your,
Well, I mean, I guess, okay, yes, that's fine.
that's okay with you?
That's fine.
Okay, well, Dennis thinks that's okay with him, so, all right, so this is a bigger thing now, it's a concept review and setting a date. Now, let's have a more discussion on this one.
Just so everybody understands, the concept is just saying this is an appropriate use for this piece of land. It's not, and that the way they're going about it is
And we-
generally okay with us.
And we like the
We'll get
design,
the
yeah.
design, and we'll get the signs, and we'll
Right.
get the landscaping and all that
I was just
stuff.
looking at the recommendation from staff, and it doesn't
Right.
say anything about concept review, and so that was my reaction.
Oh, right, and I understand that. It does, we do have it on the agenda, but we don't have it in the staff report.
Yeah, well,
We certainly can.
it looks like Eileen changed her mind, so.
No, she called it a concept review.
I did call it concept review, so.
Right, I mean, there'll be conditional use hearing, and then we still have to approve the conditional use,
Yep,
And the
and
design review.
and the SIP.
And the details, yeah.
Yeah.
that comes later,
So
so.
there's a lot.
Okay, so any more discussion? Okay, then I call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Okay, so the concept review and the public hearing date is approved for the plaza development by Kent Johnson. Okay, all right.
Then
Good
they're
job,
staying up there
guys.
because we still
Oh,
have
there's
concept
a, all right, that's
It's a
a
good use for
clear.
that stuff.
Request for tax incremental District number 5 to number 5 assistance, Plaza Development 3 LLC, Kent Johnson proposed hotel development 8353 Murphy Drive. So this is the request for the TIF money.
And-
Now,
and-
this is a big thing now,
Right, well,
so.
and for our finance director and finance staff is still requesting information from them about that. So tonight, if it could be concept approval, if you're comfortable with that, of the use of TIF for this, with the exact eligible items and the amount, and the payback, the amount going to the TIF plus the amount going to this, to be determined, but the use of TIF for this type of use, if that could be conceptually approved, then we'll keep working on all the rest. And the reasons, I tried to lay out the reasons we'd be looking at that. So far in this area, Titus Crest, the strip buildings which have restaurants and service-type retail, they're fine, there's nothing wrong with them, but they don't create the value that this hotel will, which is a 4-story building, which, but for the TIF, couldn't locate here. It's a good location for it because it does provide an ancillary service for businesses, provides a greater value. And again, we're still working out the details about the eligible costs and the payback. Right now, I think the request is somewhere in the $600,000 range. We'd be looking at getting initially from day one, when payments are made, it's the developer financed, a certain percentage back to the city, back to the TIF.
So as I look at this, if they're requesting 645, and the increment generated is 142, then if nothing went back to the city, you'd still get a payback to the city of like 4.5 to 5
It's
years.
pretty fast payback. So we'd probably be looking to increase that to get some back to the city right away,
Right.
to the TIF district.
Like an 80-20 or something.
Yeah, or 70-30.
70-30, I like,
60-40.
50-50, well, we're just throwing numbers out.
We're still talking.
no, I like,
Yeah.
no less than 30, and then we will
30%.
see that if we
Yeah.
can, at some stage, have 60-40. So there are, Eileen and I had pretty good discussion early in the day, and there are some items, which we are going to be, the first two items, they seem okay. The third item looks okay as well, but there are other items which seem to need clarification.
And
this-
that's where we're getting some more information.
And this is mostly because of the soils.
It's mostly because of
And
the
it's
soils.
developer finance.
It's developer financed.
Well, it may be developer financed, but we haven't really helped the other hotel the same way.
We haven't, except
So-
we have provided assistance to the business parks where most of them are located. Downtown, we did, the Greenway, and then Discovery. So we have, to a certain extent, not specifically individual ones, but we're looking at it more as an economic development and a value versus what you could get here otherwise.
Is this to 5?
It's 3.
3.
So,
Yeah, well, one of the things which is convincing to me is the soil quality, that the soil is very poor.
it is poor.
But I looked at the, you go to the Courtyard by Marriott, and that's 3 stories.
Which one?
Courtyard by Marriott, that's 3, will be just further down.
I think what you find there's a sand pit that goes in there.
Oh, is there little
They
nice
were
area?
that was on sand. When I put Murphy Drive in, there was sand on Murphy Drive.
Oh,
Okay.
But you go 50 feet away and now there's some clay, so.
You do have some pockets, small
Yeah,
pockets,
yeah.
nice material.
Pleasant Company, same way when I sold that land back there. Some of it was better than others, obviously. You could find sand, you could find peat. And then we've got a layer of clay down about 12 feet, and that's what drives it. So now you've got to get helicords down to about 45 feet, 47 feet to anchor this building on. That's part of it. There's more to it than that. But
So that inn, what is that? Inn also, that's also on
There's a-
sand? There's one hotel
There's
which
2
is,
hotels,
yeah,
Discovery Springs,
so,
probably.
the thing that drives the payback levy is that it's assessed at, I'm paying taxes on the assessed value of 1.5 full plus. So that's why the payback is so quick on this land. So, yeah.
so but the biggest reason for asking for TIF is because it's sitting on the clay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Water's done.
So well, we need a clear justification when we are making an exception, because, if we haven't done something before and we are doing it now, we have to justify why we are doing it, so. Okay, any questions while
I
discussing?
mean, a developer finance TIF for economic development that has that quick of a payback period? I think that's a good idea.
Oh, wow, boy, that Kurt seems happy.
Always a
about
good
that.
idea.
Okay, well, we still need a motion, so,
A move to grant concept approval for the TIF assistance.
need a second.
I'll second.
Okay, now let's the discussion begin. David, what do you have to say? Anybody, well, Kurt, Dennis,
No, looks fine.
anyone else? If there's no more discussion, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion is passed. Now these guys can go home, right, and
Thank you.
drink some beer.
Just one did Randy have to go to, Greg?
The neighborhood meeting.
Yeah.
So you will come up with a lot more details the next time
Yeah.
at the hearing.
And there has to be a traffic impact analysis, and we'll
Yep.
get working on that. I think
And
they've
it's-
submitted there.
There has to be a traffic impact because it's a conditional use.
It's set up for both rezonings and conditional uses.
So Kent, you know all those details,
Yeah.
so you're going to work
Yeah,
with them?
He should know that.
Okay.
I think he's probably paid the
Okay, all right.
escrow already.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the specific implementation plan modification for signage for advertisers press on Parview Road.
I wrote the staff comments for this. I don't know if anybody's here. It's typically when there's a new sign in a new location on a building, we come to Plan Commission with it for design review approval, excuse me. And so this is a sign on the north elevation. They currently have existing signage on the south Highway 14 facing elevation. And so it's a 64 square foot sign, and staff recommendation is approval as a minor SIP modification.
So they're just adding another sign.
Right. They have 2 frontages, so
Okay.
it's appropriate.
All
Move
right.
approval as a minor SIP modification.
Okay, need a second. Okay, discussion. Any questions about the sign? So Mark, the sign meets all the requirements, right? Okay,
I'll say something.
yes,
It's a sign.
yes.
There are 3 windows underneath it.
Oh,
I think they're windows, are they, those black things?
Yes.
windows or doors?
I wonder if the sign couldn't respond to the spacing, to those windows, and perhaps be as high as the awning rather than just another sign stuck up there in total isolation.
So have it relate to the 3 windows that are beneath it.
Yeah,
Which-
even if
that's a
it
good
makes it a little
suggestion.
larger, I don't know how much leeway there is in signage. It could be 6 inches, 9 inches lower to line up with the awning,
I see your point.
just
Those
to
are
make
good
it
points.
look as if
Yep,
somebody
No.
thought about it.
purposeful.
Actually, that does make a sense, yeah. Good point, Dave.
So have it aligned with the awning and with
Yeah.
the windows beneath it. Okay.
I think that's a very good suggestion. Any other questions or comments? Okay, if there are no other question or comments or discussion, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion for the sign is passed. So the next one is capital budget request for Northeast Middleton Connector Path Project.
At your last
Mark has handouts here.
Yeah, I just am handing out some supplemental information. At your last meeting, which I was unable to attend, you reviewed a list of capital items, projects proposed for funding through capital borrowing or TIF. And on that list, there was an item for design engineering services for the Northeast Middleton Connector Path, but I didn't have listed in the table the anticipated construction costs. And so in the interest of full transparency, that was an oversight. So I wanted to bring this back to you to make sure that it's fully transparent as to what the design engineering is for, and then in the subsequent year or years, that there's a capital cost that goes with it. A little background is in order here. We originally received a grant for $268,000 to from the Transportation Alternatives Program. That was awarded to us last August, early September. And over the course of the following months, as we began to prepare for the project and develop an RFP and request design engineering services, a couple consulting firms brought to my attention, the city's attention, a concern about continuing with the grant. The first person that brought it to our attention was Tom Stetzer, who's our TIF project engineer. And then Linda Fink, this is the email I just circulated from Core Incorporated. She was kind enough to, last January, put together a list bulleted here, you see, and then also continuing beneath it, a list of the various aspects of the project that would be required with continuing with the grant that could either be avoided or substantially reduced. Actually, she said the word bypass. And so the conclusion reached by staff and then the Pike Transit Committee was that it wasn't in the city's best interest to proceed with the grant funding for this project. We also had an issue arise with some neighbors that are concerned about the sidewalk being widened in front of their home by Branch Street. So between Branch Street and CVS, you imagine 6 or 7 houses that are there. The proposal was to have the sidewalk replaced with a 10-foot wide path that would nibble at their front yards by 6 or 7 feet or so. So there's some discussion as to whether that path should be routed behind their homes instead. And then the last complicating factor was that I made an error with the distance calculation, which then affected real estate acquisition costs and paving costs. And so for various reasons, the proceeding with the grant is not in our best interest, is what we've concluded. And then for other reasons, the cost estimate has increased, according to Tom Stetzer, who developed the $600,000 figure. I'm hopeful it will be less than that, but we felt it was important to bring it to the Plan Commission's attention.
Well, this is really good that you're doing this, but the question is that we just earned $268,000 down, and which we had the grant. And number one, this is really a project which needs to be addressed, and it has been there for a long time. And I think something should be done about this, and hopefully soon. Is it possible, with all the things which you said, that the neighbors' concern and could we address those concerns, and is there any possibility that we could still get that money from that grant folks, and then we have to pay only half of that, 600,000, rather than paying all 600, so we will be paying 332,000.
The neighbor concerns aside, which it's not, I don't think, as relevant to whether we accept the grant or not. It just it's just a wrinkle in terms of possibly shifting the alignment of the route. The concern raised by Tom Stetzer was that they actually weren't even going to submit a proposal to the city if we continued with the grant. I mean, that was his conclusion, that it just was not in the cities. They weren't interested in proceeding with that project with all the strings that are attached to the federal funds. They simply were not going to. Strand Associates.
Oh, Strand, okay.
But there are other companies, right?
But there are other ways.
Strand is only one.
Well, that's true. That's true. I also talked with Dane County Parks planners who said they don't chase the grant, this specific grant funding, unless the project is half to $1 million at minimum. It just isn't worth it in terms of the I's dotting and T's crossing that has to happen.
The construction cost of $600,000 is for the cost of the path if we don't accept the grant.
Right.
If we do accept the grant, the costs for the path would be higher.
Is that,
I think that's
is there
it.
Davis-Bacon requirements?
Oh, yeah, there's all that sort of stuff, yeah.
But there are other requirements.
Davis-Bacon is federal prevailing wage requirements.
Yeah, and that's what this bulleted list, that's why I'm handing this out.
That's a lot of environmental documentation.
Yeah, and there has to be, 20,000 pound loading capacity in all structures. Well, DOT has a lot more stringent requirements. They also then charge us a review fee, which was, I want to say around $40,000 or $50,000 that we wouldn't have to. So we'd prepare the design, and then we'd have to pay them to do that review. So Tom said out of the gate, under the best case scenario, he thought it would be basically a wash with the grant, and that's not anticipating any hiccups that could arise. Okay. So, and one of the hiccups is, which I haven't even mentioned, and I'm not sure if I've even told the council this yet. I was advised early this summer by our utility manager. Mm-hmm. He advised me that where the bridge crosses Pheasant Branch Creek, east of CVS, so if you imagine, not the creek crossing by Stamhouse, but by the eastern one, there's a water main that runs along the north side of the bridge, on the north side, and so he didn't even want to see the path on that side of the bridge over the water main, which is a real conundrum, because I had planned to have the path be immediately adjacent to the bridge, and if you go out there, you'll see that there's a landing. I mean, it actually would work really nicely, but he's concerned, and obviously it's not entirely his decision, it would be a council decision, but he's concerned about siting a bridge over a city structure like that in the case that there needs to be maintenance in the future. Obviously, a bridge could be lifted out of the way, but the point is there were other things that were coming up that design was going to reveal, and Tom Stetzer felt that it was not in the city's best interest.
So this is for information or recommendation or whatever?
Well, it's before you tonight because when I saw the list that I was on vacation and I didn't take care of this before I left. So when I saw the list, I realized there was a number missing, and so I wanted to make sure, and we're talking with Aileen and Abby, we wanted to make sure the list was thorough. So I take responsibility for missing the.
Because we already recommended approval of the $50,000 for the design.
Right, but
this is just to add it to the capital budget.
But the other items, there were other items on the list that showed a multi-year investment, and this one was missing, and I wanted to make sure that you had that just for full.
Would go in 2019.
Do you have a
right?
Do you have a map of where this is? Would that be on the bike pad plan?
Yeah, it's basically from Branch Street east to the signalized intersection of Highland Way up the hill. So as you go through past CVS, Allen Boulevard, go up the hill to the signal, that's where it would end, at least as the first phase.
So Mark, at some stage it will go all the way to Highway Q? At some stage?
I think that makes a lot of sense. The problem is east of Highland Way, we have a lot of residents there that have a fence, and there's slope issues, so we'd be nibbling away at the rear yards of a lot of single-family residences, probably 15 or 20. I don't know, Dan, how many that is up there in his neighborhood, but the point is, we try to keep the project as straightforward as possible by and minimizing the chance for hiccups, I guess, by just keeping the segment defined from Branch to Highland Way. the first Highland Way, the western one, because once you get to Highland Way, a bicyclist can go through the neighborhood there on streets that are not along Century. So we decide to focus on that as the most critical link.
Okay.
Ideally, it would go to Highway Q and beyond in the future because the county is planning to put a bike path
Right,
along the
all
north
the way.
side of, all the way along M. So we really would like to do that in the future, but,
So for now, it will solve the problem.
well, it would address a critical gap in our bike, all-season, all-weather bicycle network. Northeast Middleton doesn't have one other than
Okay.
sidewalk along Century, which is really inadequate.
Okay. well,
Yes.
Okay, so any more questions?
Question.
Yes.
So are you asking for capital borrowing or TIF money?
We have not determined exactly what the proper mix is. There's not a positive cash flow in TID 5 yet, and a portion of this segment is outside of the TID 5 area, project area. I mean, it's within half a mile, but we don't have an exact answer for that yet. So how it will be funded will be likely a combination of the two.
But I thought, like, if it was TIF, that it wouldn't happen unless you use TIF. But if this could happen because you have capital money, wouldn't that be, that wouldn't meet the...
We do street projects in the city. Abby and Eileen can speak to this better than me, but sometimes we choose, instead of standard capital borrowing for street projects, if we feel there's an economic development component to it, we use TIF funding to repair, like Parmenter Street, for example, and
Peter
Terrace
Wells,
Avenue. Those were rebuilt not with standard borrowing, but as a TIF project, where we enhance the streetscape.
If it's in the project plan, then it
Exactly.
already meets the but-for test.
Okay,
It's-
anywhere in there, okay.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah. The but-for test only comes at the joint review board, not at the project approval.
Okay, so what do you need the recommendation now from the plan commission? Is that what it is, or is it more for information here?
Well, I think essentially it's just, I wanted to make sure that we felt it was important to endorse, to have that table that you saw last time, to have that $600,000 figure added, just so that you are aware of it and that I just wanted it to be fully disclosed.
I would make motion that we endorse the addition of the $600,000 to the proposed budget for construction in 2019, with the understanding that this may need to be postponed if TID 5 funding is to be used, or if CAP funding is not available.
And Mark is going to see if we could find some better grants, not what we had, hopefully so. Okay, need a second. Second, so let's, now there's a discussion now, so I see a lot of reluctance here, so.
I'm not sure, it says with the understanding that this may need to be postponed, so I'm not sure.
It's to add it to the future capital budget.
Right, no, I understand
Yeah.
that, but,
I mean, we're not locking this into 2019 if we don't have the funding available.
oh, it's just the source of funding you're questioning.
Right.
I guess that's okay. Seems a little iffy.
Well, and that's probably because I wanted to put that in there because we had talked about it, Abby and Mark and Mike and I, about the TID funding. You know, one of the things we're doing is, looking at economic development projects that give back part of that money, that funding to the TID 5 because it's doing well, but it could do a lot better, and we need to have some funding sources. And if we have enough built up that we could use cash for this, that would be a great funding source if the council chooses to do that. If not, they could also look at a combination with capital
And some grants.
But TID 5's not distressed, so TID
It's not
3
distressed.
TID 3 can't donate.
Well, actually,
could.
it can, but there's some other things with that, so.
Okay.
Anyway.
Yes,
but,
the TIF 5 is,
Yeah, thanks.
You know a lot more about that than I do, but.
the TIF 5 is $600,000 cash negative, so I think, 640,000. So, but, okay, so I'm okay with this as long as, we are sort of more in a thinking stage that it will be the capital TIF and hopefully let's look at if we can find some grants which are not bad like the other one was, and we could somehow have a combination of these things, so.
And we've been very fortunate to have TID 3 and be able to fund a lot of projects through cash. We've been very fortunate. TID 5 is doing well, but we don't have that ongoing
Not a
surplus.
cash flow, right?
Right, we might have to borrow for it if the city says, well, that's what we want to do, or,
And Mayor, I want to, you gently suggest a different word. I wouldn't say that the grant is bad.
Oh, okay.
Just saying it's not, it probably wasn't the best grant to pursue for a project of where we requested that amount.
Okay.
I think the grant is the successor to the Transportation Enhancements Program, which led to the paving and the bridge installation in the Creek Corridor. And we've done other things with enhancement grants in the area. So I support the grant program. In this case, after we applied and got more consultants involved in review, it just became clear that it wasn't quite the right fit for this project. But I don't
Okay.
consider it a bad grant. I just
Well,
wanna make
I
sure.
just see if the cost of just monitoring and implementing is just as much as the grant itself. That doesn't say a whole lot
I
about
hate
it.
to make the comparison, but the federal, using money at the airport, federal funds, things end up costing quite a bit more than they might if we built them without federal funds. And there are reasons for that. The Davis, I forget, Bacon.
Davis-Bacon
Act. I mean, some of these things are valid public policy goals, but they end up making projects cost more and take longer to implement. And it's just, there's pros and cons with different funding sources.
Yes, Kathy.
This motion with a goal to have so much in grant money, just to have the goal of having, you bring back money for the project, a certain amount, even 100,000, or I don't know.
Or maybe like one-third.
Well,
One-third capital, one-third TIP 5.
Or just a goal. mean,
I can't, I don't have as much experience as Abby and Penny Klein did, and for that matter, Matt Amundsen, who's not here. But there are others that, in other departments in the city that pursue every grant. There are staff that are aware of a variety of grant funding sources, and Abby's one of the most creative people I've ever met, who knows.
And she might help you.
And Penny, for that matter, had her beat. She's inherited the mantle from Penny in terms of creative grant writing. And but Penny did a lot of innovative things for the city. Abby has. Matt Amundsen comes with a lot of grant experience. So I think wherever we can identify grant funding as a source, like I tried to do here, we try to pursue those grants. The stewardship grant for the across from the Stam House there, the trailhead. That was something that Abby led that effort. So we try to pursue grant funding where possible.
Aren't you on the MPO? Get us some more TAP money.
Yes, I'm all for it, yes.
And I will, this is somewhat embarrassing for me because I don't write grant applications too often, and so I'm very, very disappointed that this hasn't been working out. But I also, I did the best that I could. You do what you can.
Well,
we'll grant you that.
You got Matt and Abby to help you out, so.
I have to go to a tap now.
Yeah, well, it's good to tap things, right?
Yes.
Okay, any more questions
Big federal funding
or
jobs that we-
discussion? Is everybody ready to vote then? If there are no more questions or concerns, so let's, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, so the motion is passed. So the capital budget request for Northeast Middleton Connector Path. All right, we are on to bigger things now. Historic Pheasant Branch District, Historic Pheasant Branch Crossing District Concept. Plan Commission, Eileen.
and Abby put together that
Okay, Abby.
schedule, which is a really good schedule.
So we had this on the Plan Commission agenda for a meeting in June, and we got some feedback from the Plan Commission, and part of that was to get some public input on this concept plan, and part of it was to also take it to Landmarks Commission to get public input as well. And so we kind of have been taking a little bit of a closer look at the concept, and we made some changes, and we thought that it made sense to bring it back to the Plan Commission to review the changes and endorse a timetable that we've laid out so that we can then mail this concept out to the neighbors and get some what we're proposing to get some neighborhood feedback at the Plan Commission meeting on August 22nd. So just going over some of the bigger changes, I think you know the impetus for the plan. This was originally a concept that I think was adopted by the City Council back in 2015, but now we've continued to expand on the goals. On the second page of the document, fulfilling overall goals for the area, those have not really changed. Those are the goals that were set forward in the TIF plan that was adopted several years ago. There is a discussion of the historic Pheasant Branch success story. I'm sorry, historic Stam House success story, and also two proposed residential housing opportunities. One that is the Stagecoach project that's proposed, and one that might come forward in the future as a redevelopment of the Cops Grocery Store building. There's also mention of the Trailhead, the grant that Mark was just talking about to acquire property to develop a trailhead. The city has approved the receipt of that grant, but we have not moved forward yet on acquiring the property. So it's still, in the planning stage, but we felt like that should be addressed there. And then also a brief discussion of stormwater management infrastructure. I think the most important changes are at the end of the document on the implementation steps. These are things that have come up in discussions since the June meeting. So the first bullet point is to establish district design guidelines for new developments and existing building renovations. The second is to consider establishing a historic district. And this came up in a meeting with Mayor Brar and some of the neighborhood residents. The idea to actually establish this as a historic district, which might have some oversight from the Landmarks Commission. And then to continue to work with community partners to implement public improvements and appropriate development. So the schedule that we have laid out here would be tomorrow we would mail out the information to the neighborhood. We would hold a public input session at Plan Commission on August 22nd. Likely we would be able to present some ideas for design guidelines at that meeting, working with our TIP consultants. Then the following night is the August Landmarks Commission meeting. So we would have the public input at the Plan Commission, and then we would let the Landmarks Commission provide input on the plan as well. Take all of that and incorporate it into the document. September 12th, if the concept is ready, we would bring it back to the Plan Commission to consider a recommendation to the council, and possibly it could be on the council agenda for September 19th. I did want to mention, I believe you all received this email. It was forwarded to me. It should be part of the public record, and it's from Mr. Rick Soto. It was emailed on Saturday, August 5th, with several points related to the plan. So if you didn't get this, we can forward you a copy of it.
Yes, good.
Sorry, I have a number of questions.
Oh, wow.
Sorry.
So
That is
your questions are musical, looks like.
No, shush. Now I forgot what I was. So are any of these buildings that you identify that is identified as historic, are they listed on a state or national register? Or a local register that protects them from?
The top left, the old Pheasant Branch School, which is the VFW building,
yeah.
that's a local landmark. The Palmer House is a local landmark. The Stam House is local and possibly on the state registry. Pheasant Branch Brewery no longer exists, unfortunately. Cool if it did. The blacksmith shop is a local landmark, and the Wolf House is a local landmark.
Okay.
And the building there that Kuko's is in.
Kukos.
We don't know that that's a historic building. We actually have no records on that building, but our TIF planning consultants thought that that might be a historic building, or at least might be
Site of
a
Might have been
site
at
of-
one point in time.
Right. It might
certainly
be-
doesn't look.
It might be that the old foundation is still there and then a new building sits on it. So they wanted to.
So we do not have any local historic districts in our zoning ordinance.
We don't have any districts listed in the zoning ordinance. However, we have what we call the East End Historic District, which is on Elmwood Avenue and Hubbard Avenue. And I think it's about 61 homes that meet a specific criteria that they fall into the category of being in that district. We haven't done a very good job of signing it, so not very many people know that it's there, and it's one thing that Landmarks Commission is working on right now, along with the upgrade of all the historic plaques.
I guess the other question is, if we adopt, or if Common Council adopts, we recommend adoption of this district plan, is that an amendment to our comprehensive plan, or it's just it's advisory for next steps?
Because we're going to be adopting our comp plan later this year, we would likely want it to be rolled
Okay,
into that
rolled
as a, guideline for that area. I mean, I don't know if Abby or Mark feel differently, but that's what I was thinking.
Abby, could you make the Landmarks Commission also, you'll send out the agenda for the 23rd, but make them aware that the 22nd there's going to be a public hearing so they could come if they wanted to hear the
discussion, yes.
That's a good idea.
Is the 22nd also when we're doing the Stagecoach rezoning public hearing?
Yep.
That'll be a lot of public hearings in one night.
I was going to question that one.
We can push it back, too.
The wisdom of doing those two together. Abby, I think you said the architecture, the design guidelines would look at architectural character.
Yes.
Now, critical in that equation, I would see the Stagecoach.
Right. I think
Your architectural character guidelines might be totally at odds with the plan that is put forward.
right. The two are separate, but they are
Right.
very integrally tied together, and we know that many of the people who are weighing in on the project also are very interested in the process for the historic Pheasant Branch crossing. What we tried initially when we received the Stagecoach proposal a couple years ago now, we had a set of guidelines, but they weren't design guidelines. It wasn't specific criteria that we could hand a developer doing a project to say, make it meet this. And so I think that's part of the reason that the Stagecoach project now has gone through 3 iterations of architecture. And so we feel like having specific guidelines as part of the plan is important so that we can put developers on notice and say, this is what we expect to see. I think the action that is being requested at the August 22nd meeting from the developer for the Stagecoach project is for GIP zoning, which likely wouldn't be approval of the architecture for the building. It would likely be approval of, the footprint and possibly the massing and the density on the site, but maybe not the elevations. So I don't think that they necessarily would have to hold each other up, I guess.
And it could be the
What
public
else?
hearing.
What I
And the
think too
use.
is, I think
Yes.
it's
Right, and the use, yeah.
I think it's a good idea to have those two things at the same time, because the people that are interested in one of those topics are going to be interested in the other one. And if you read what's in here, it talks about some of the goals for development in that area. And if people are willing to listen, they can see that there are some things in here that would go along with putting
Right.
a new building in there. I agree with David about the way the building looks, but my concern about treating them entirely separately is people might want to take this as a reason for not doing anything of a development nature in that area, and I don't think that's what this intends. And so to the extent that people can hear what's being said, to have all of that said and try to meld them together, I think it's a good idea to have them both here at the same time.
Right. I mean, it might make for a long meeting that night. We might have to change our timer on our door so that we're open until 11.
Yeah.
We are changing it till we're over.
Well,
Right.
there are
Or
three
meeting
Except for
other
George.
hearings besides
There's
this.
other hearings too.
But it would mean that, people who are interested in both only have to come out for one meeting rather than
Yes.
coming out.
And we
Two
are.
plans.
And hopefully they'll be able to see the connection, that it's not just their issue, that there's a bigger picture to.
Yes, David.
I worry then that there is a plan of a building that looks awfully like Stagecoach in this document.
This is it's a proposal.
No, it's not. It's a footprint of the Stagecoach plan.
Right, but it says developer proposed potential residential project.
It just says proposed and potential.
We felt like it would not be honest to bring this plan forward and not show that there is a proposal right now that is being reviewed. So we tried to make it clear with the language that this is proposed and potential, not approved. But we felt like it made sense to show people what that proposal looks like compared to the rest of the district, and that this is an active proposal that the city is reviewing.
But I have to worry about you saying we could approve a footprint and not approve elevations. Those two things go together integrally.
And it's possible, though, on the 22nd, and we haven't written the staff comments yet, but it's possible that we'll recommend holding the public hearing and gathering the input, and then postponing action on it until the following meeting, which is when you might be acting on the design guidelines. I mean, we haven't had a chance to talk about it, but that's kind of, a potential. And also, I just wanted to clarify, we do have 3 public hearings for rezonings that night. We were calling this a public input session, if that's okay. I mean, we don't intend to put something in the paper. We intend to put something on the website and notify all the residents of the, we're going to send them a colored copy of this, so, I mean, if that's okay, we would call it a public input session.
Yeah, I had talked to Eileen that we will not be voting on the approvals on any 3 of those hearings. Well, even Plan Commission shouldn't, it will be 2 weeks later.
Well, there might be
So,
some, I mean,
yeah,
I think if there's
yeah.
a lot of public input, but there's one that's more of a, it's not connected with this, it's in the downtown, and it's more of a, so we might ask
Yeah.
the Plan Commission to act on that, because it's a project we've been working on for 3 years, and it's already had zoning, this is just a
okay.
change to it. So, but normally, we might say, let's hold the hearing and act on the next meeting, or.
That gives
future
enough
meeting.
time to Plan Commission members to study all the comments and, be ready for it, so. But you do have any other concerns? How about you,
I
Dan?
would agree with David, and I think all of the things that have just been said are splitting hairs. When you take a look at this document, the only thing that I see as conceptual is the top of page 2. And if you were to exclude those hard-lined buildings in there and just look at, hey, we've got this dotted line over there, that's going to be the Stam House area, and then we got another one over across the street, and we've got something over here. It's when you get into these rather firm-looking, and of course, the cat's out of the bag. Everybody knows what that Stam House, it's the Stagecoach plan looks like, so it jumps out as a foregone conclusion. And I don't care what you say about what it says in here, people aren't going to read it. They're going to look at what they see. And, and I think that in that sense, it's just a big PR problem.
Well, we could take out the proposed Stagecoach project, we could take out the proposed project east of Stam House, and we could take out the proposed potential, redevelopment of the cops, and we could take out the proposed trailhead, but then what are we showing people? I mean, that's everything. They're all conceptual at this point.
Does the TID plan show approximately where Stagecoach is, that's a potential redevelopment area, right?
No, it talks about infill and higher density development.
Or I mean, if we didn't list it as developer proposed potential residential project with that footprint that looks a lot like Stagecoach, we would want to show it as a potential redevelopment area on the neighborhood concept plan, in the same way that you would want to show, the residential redevelopment of the old cops as a potential, as a targeted area for good residential redevelopment. Is there a proposed redevelopment of the area east of the Stam House?
Potentially.
It's just
Potentially.
It
It's
hasn't
just potential.
been officially proposed, but it's a potential.
That again is a thing that caught my eye is, look at that as the huge parking lot and the entirely different use of that area than what we have thought of before, and the traffic nightmare we're going to have if it really does hold as many cars as that shows.
Which parking?
The Stam House.
The Stam House, it goes all the way back to the creek.
That's existing.
But that
Does
has been
go
there
all the way
forever.
back.
Well, the pavement
Not that
to the east of the Stam House is where the metal building is now.
Yes.
So that is more pavement.
And that's not a historic building.
And
The metal building?
I'm really talking about what's on the what would that be, the south end of that? This is slightly askew, but the south end. That's all additional parking, I believe, is it not? I can't believe the Stam House parking is as big as it seems to be shown
Yeah,
on
it
here.
is, I think, yeah.
Yeah, because I think that the concept shows adding like a green space between the building and the parking area.
Right.
I mean, it's, like I said, it's very conceptual.
Very conceptual.
Well,
Those two buildings look like the historically appropriate buildings related to the Stam House. You know, just the way they're drawn.
The ones labeled commercial and boutique hotel.
Yes.
Okay, yes.
The historic Stam House neighborhood.
they have gable
They
roofs.
look like they're historic context buildings.
Mhm.
Historic buildings, but they're in context. The Stagecoach one, especially even more so when you see it on the trailhead, right on the back page, looks like a monster.
Okay, other,
I guess one other question. If council adopts this plan, does that commit the city to moving forward with the trailhead? Or is that just conceptual that, okay.
No, and we weren't asking for approval. We were just asking for you to look at the timeline
Yes.
Yes.
and give us approval to send this document out. But if you want to see changes to the document before we send it out, then that we would want
How
it.
about this?
Yes,
Because,
Cindy.
well, I'm thinking of what David just said about these buildings next to the Stam House and the one over where the old cop store is that says residential redevelopment, which are clearly drawn in there as placeholders, not meant to represent anything that's been proposed. What about if where the existing stagecoach is if that was changed to be just a blob or something, a square or something that doesn't resemble,
Like a bubble, you mean?
yeah, or even a building, but that doesn't resemble what we've had proposed, so that, I don't want anybody to think it's a foregone conclusion either, but if that just didn't look like what we've seen as a proposed project, would that make people happier? So that it.
I tend to agree with Abby's point that, though, since we have an actual proposal with a site plan for rezoning,
Yeah.
if you don't include it, then it looks like you're
Being disingenuous.
being disingenuous and trying to shade the truth.
Yeah.
If you include it, it looks like it's a foregone conclusion. So
Yeah.
we're probably, either way, we'd have to explain it to neighbors and our citizens, because either way, it sounds like whichever way you choose to go,
Yeah.
people who are going to oppose the project are going to find your actions disingenuous.
Yeah,
And
that's
I
true.
liken it to the concept plans that have been put together for the Parmenter Street corridor, for Allen Boulevard, for Meritor in that area. There were lots of buildings shown, there were lots of footprints shown, but the Planning Commission and the council still have to take additional action. What this is trying to do is look at all the different things that might go into that decision and the issues that exist in this area. So I think Kurt's right, that whichever we do, and we didn't want to say, oh, well, we're taking that off of there, even though that's proposed.
Yeah, no, I get your point, I was just.
No, I know,
trying to
looking
work
for a
on this.
compromise, no, I
Yeah.
know, but I was just addressing the other comments that were made.
okay.
There's still a process that each project has to go through, and certainly the state.
Okay, so what do you want from the commission now?
Approval of the timeline that Evans put together, which we thought was,
So it's approval of the timeline.
Could I ask just a
Yes,
question?
yeah.
What accompanies this that you're sending out to people?
a letter and this a letter inviting them to the input session on the 22nd.
Could we ask that letter tend to specify what you were just saying, that these are kind of concept drawings, this is not architectural renderings of the actual proposals or something of that nature, so that people understand that, by sending out this plan, we are neither committing to or against any proposed development.
It's like concept review, it's not binding on the city.
It's a neighborhood concept plan. Oh, yes.
Yeah, go ahead, Susan.
Could you put a statement in there?
Could you load that mic, please?
Could you put a statement in somewhere stating that there's some indications that there's some buildings there that are proposed, but they need further approval and process and rezoning? Sure. So that people are getting a feel for the actual process? That could possibly take care of this conflict?
Yeah, that's what Kurt is saying too, so good idea. Thank you, Susan.
What is the radius that you're going to send these out to the neighbors?
I wanted to bring you the map, but DCI map was not working. It kept, when I was selecting this area, it kept sending me over to Cottage Grove, and it did it like 3 or 4 separate times.
We're not going to notify.
So I was going to try to go just a little bit beyond the white boundary here. I mean, I would say 1 parcel depth beyond the white outlined area. And it would just go to owners, so it wouldn't go to
The renters.
it wouldn't go to an occupant, because we don't know, we only have the information for the owner of the property. So that's how we send out notices through the county
And
system.
this and the letter would be online so that people could look at it online?
Yeah, we'd probably post it on Notify Me, the main page of the city website.
Okay, that looks like a good compromise.
I'm sure somebody will put it on the next.
I would move to approve staff timetable
Okay,
with the recommendation that the letter include the comments from Alder West and what we've discussed.
okay, need a second.
Second.
Discussion.
And that landmarks be also notified of the 22nd?
Yes.
Yes.
And, yes.
Any more questions? Any more discussion? David, everybody's happy now? Okay. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay.
Opposed.
So, opposed. Okay, 1. So, okay, so it's the 5 to 1, so. All right, so the next item is set a public hearing, request for rezoning, Trista mixed use, including Middleton Market, 7622 Lisa Lane. Eileen, Abby, Mark, who is going to?
We're proposing it to be on September 12th, at whatever time, 7:15.
So moved.
So, I'll second it.
Okay, any discussion? It's just only the setting the date,
Yep,
that's it.
that's
Yep. Setting the public hearing.
Setting public hearing.
Public hearing, yes. Okay, I call the question. All those in favor say aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, there we are.
Move to adjourn.
So, need a second.
Second.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your input. Very productive meeting.
Did the length of the meeting comport?